A stroll through history. From the sea, most of the perimeter of the island of El Hierro looks like an enormous cliff that only drops in height in very few places. According to the chronicles of Le Canarien, this difficult access was suffered by the early inhabitants, the Bimbaches, and also by the first European conquistadors. If we jump to the 19th century, another traveler, an English woman called Olivia Stone, speaks of an island that still presents difficulties of access and inland travel. You have to approach El Hierro in a different way from the other islands. The entire coast is sheer and the flat coast that does exist is surrounded by cliffs. El Hierro, the smallest and most western isle in the archipelago of the Canaries, is also one of the most precipitous. On the map, distances are short, but inland it has always been difficult to get from one place to another. For example, from El Golfo to the higher plateau, or from the western side, El Julan and La Dehesa, to the rest of the island. El Julan has always been the most isolated area of El Hierro. This is not strange, since it's a dry, unfertile land of minimum vegetation and steep slopes. After the conquest, El Julan was soon forgotten. Only sheep herds crossed the mountainside from time to time. And so it continued for centuries, while the memory of the aboriginal Bimbaches slowly faded. This extreme situation contributed to its neglect. Access was always difficult. And this is how El Julan has survived, with a landscape practically unaltered in time. No buildings and no access. A land that takes us back to the time of the Bimbaches. The words of René Vernon are still valid today. This entire region is dry and arid, and only produces scrawny grasses where numerous wild goats graze loose. A similar sensation must have been felt by the Padron brothers, Aquilino and Gumersindo, who discovered the existence of El Julan rock carvings and of the entire heritage site at the end of the 19th century. Aquilino arrived in El Julan on horseback. Today access has improved, but the trek down the mountain is still very challenging. Following it, we really feel as if we are leaving the present and immersing ourselves into the timeless world of the relics of the past. The presence of the so-called Tuggerah hill emerges powerfully on the mountainside. We soon understand why the Bimbaches chose this place to meet each other. The position is outstanding, making it easily recognizable. In its privileged location, the Tuggerah is the center of the heritage site. It is not difficult to imagine the Bimbaches sitting in a circle deliberating, carrying out justice or practicing their rights, which is how some have interpreted this place. Nearby, sacrificial altar stones and the presence of imposing shell heaps highlight the exceptional nature of this spot. How many meals were necessary for such a huge pile of shells? And what kind of meals were they? Were they Guatatiboa rituals, or merely the accumulation of scraps over dozens or hundreds of years? These are some of the many questions raised with every step we take. Indeed, nowadays it is very difficult to understand the reasons why people would have settled in such a place. And traces of the Bimbaches at the great archaeological complex at El Julan have left many mysteries yet unsolved. Did they live here permanently? Was this seasonal pasture land? Did it have any symbolic meaning? As well as adding value to the heritage site, the existence of burial caves at El Julan helps maintain questions about how the remains are interpreted. Without a doubt, the appearance of a set of petroglyphs, the signs and numbers, has contributed enormously to enhance the significance of El Julan. El Julan rock carving panels figure among the most impressive in the archipelago because of the variety and number of the motifs. It is also noteworthy that they were made horizontally, facing skywards, on two lava flows located near the Tuggerah hill. That the Bimbaches were responsible for these carvings seems to be beyond all doubt. Their patina and motifs are certainly ancient. The grooves made by striking stone against stone reveal geometric motifs, many of which are circular or coil-like. These geometric motifs are the most frequent, and several of them have been interpreted as anthropomorphic carvings, with outlines of human feet known as podomorphic or as representing animals. However, these readings very much depend on the way we look at these stone testimonies. The existence of Libico-Berber inscriptions is also extremely significant. These are ancient writings for which there is still no reliable translation, although they point to the North African origins of the original settlers of these islands. The state of the panels is precarious. Vegetation is taking over the lava and erosion has played its hand, natural but also human erosion. El Julan rock carvings have often been plundered. Already in the 19th century, extractions were made, the excuse being that they were for study, and carvings were stolen until recently. Picking our way across the lava, we discover missing sections of petroglyphs and areas where the crust of the lava flow is obviously fragile. The difficulty of preserving archaeological sites like El Julan is unquestionable. This heritage is exposed to changing environmental conditions and it is extremely delicate. It is often so easy to change the look of a site by simply moving a few stones. Alterations may even be involuntary, merely the result of carelessness. This is why our sensitivity towards sites like El Julan should be exactly the same as the sensitivity we show when standing before a great Gothic cathedral or Renaissance palace. Its significance may be less well documented, but we cannot fail to understand the importance that it must have had for the Bimbaches. Those aboriginals who patiently work stone to leave evidence of their life and culture. The complex lines of the rock carving panels suggest a meaning that we fail to comprehend. The choice of an exceptional place on the island. All these factors take us back to that magical moment when the carving was begun, to the first strike of the stone, to the beginning of a story whose significance is still wide open today. The story of a people whose customs and traditions have been lost in the shadows of history, yet glimpsed in the patchy tales of the ancient chronicles. This story is still alive today in these stones at El Julan, rock carvings that gaze up at the sky, immortalizing the men and women who first inhabited this island, the Bimbaches.